Su-jin, welcome to the Korea Deconstructed podcast. We're here to talk about your latest book, North Korean Women in Power, Daughters of the Sun. A fascinating read. I read through it the other day. It was kindly gifted to me by a mutual friend we have, perhaps, Na Seung-yeon. So let's talk about some of these North Korean women, and as well, let's talk about you, Su-jin. Your bio states that you're a South Korean journalist, but also proud of your North Korean heritage. Can you give us some information or some insight what that means to be a South Korean journalist with North Korean heritage, please?
Of course, David. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me for this podcast. And yes, I happen to be a South Korean, I happen to have grandparents on both sides who came from North Korea. So that is why I always say, I'm a South Korean with North Korean heritage, and so that sort of means that my blood is North Korean.
How does that go across in like society? So if you tell somebody you're from North Korean heritage, like I guess during the 1980s or 70s, it might have been a bit different. They might have gone sort of like Balgengi or something. But how does that go across today? I mean, is it just normal conversation? Is it something you whisper after a couple of glasses of wine, or?
Well, actually, that's a great question, but well, let me start with my childhood memories because, when I was I guess it was when I was 8 or 9, and I was attending this class, and one of my teachers back then told me, well, North Koreans are evil people and they have horns in their head. And I was like, oh my God, my grandparents are both on they're from North Korea. So will I have that horn in my head when I grow up or something? And I was really worried. But there was nothing wrong with that specific teacher. He was just telling what he was supposed to. Because those were the days, North Koreans were evil people and they were the enemies. That was what I was taught at schools. But nowadays things are very much different, and actually I think I do have still mixed feelings about my North Korean heritage, but I still say it with a grain of pride. And that's just not just me, yeah.
It's not just you. I think we see more and more people that openly say it, whether it's the ex-president, President Moon Jae-in, or various other people. I heard Na Seung-yeon even saying it today.
Yes.
On the radio. So it is quite normal, and it's good to see that in society it's become more normalized to talk about North Korean people as who they are rather than painting this picture of people with horns and stuff, as you say. What does it mean to be a journalist who reports on North Korea? So you are a journalist, Su-jin, and you work on North Korea. How does that come across? Do people sort of look at you as some person with inside information on what happens in Pyongyang? Do they keep their mouth shut and try not to tell you anything? I ask this because I know that if people like taxi drivers work out I'm a professor or something, all of a sudden their attitude changes. They're like, oh, 교수님 안녕하세요. Yeah. What's it like in Korean society being a journalist who works on North Korea?
Well, actually, government officials hate us.
Okay.
And taxi drivers, they both love and hate us. And our readers, they both love and hate us. But actually, well, what I want to talk about for your question, what I want to answer is my sort of experiences of the past. Because as a journalist, what really is special for me personally is that I got this several chances to actually go up to North Korea and just a report from there. So as you know, it is against the South Korean law, for a South Korean citizen to visit North Korean territory, right? So it is quite a kind of a rare opportunity for a South Korean to be able to actually be on North Korean soil. And as a journalist, I got several chances, I was really lucky to visit Kaesong City several times, and also Mountain Kumgang. I was not that lucky to visit Pyongyang. I would love to visit Pyongyang in the future. So being there, and what was really great about being there is that I got to talk to those people really limited like conversations, of course, but still I got to like, drink coffee with them, and I got to like, say hello to them in our own language. Of course, they got the usage is a little different by now after all those years of separation. But actually we got to talk, we used the same Hangul. So like speaking to each other like in the same language is a really special experience.
Let's get to those experiences. Before we do that, why do the government officials hate you?
Because we always try to, find fault with them.
I guess, and
We always criticize them. Yeah.
it's the, if you're not doing that as a journalist, then it's just public relations. I think George Orwell said, you have to
Yes.
print what people don't want. I find it very interesting. The people that are allowed to Pyongyang or are allowed to Baekdu-san are the South Korean elites. So if you're a president or a chaebol, you can go there. But for regular
Yeah.
citizens, it's much harder.
Yes.
Is there something spiritual, emotional as a South Korean? Because, for example, being a British citizen, I can go to Pyongyang on tours and things,
Yes.
right? As a South Korean,
I am so jealous.
Yeah. As a South Korean, is there something spiritual, emotional? How does it feel like to be speaking Korean with North Koreans and sharing coffee with them, Su-jin?
It was almost surreal experience because, being there, because I could have been one of them myself, because, like if my grandparents like chose to stay in North Korea during the war, I could have been one of them, and I could have been just like, wearing their uniforms and just like being happy, being North Korean and hating South Koreans and imagining that South Koreans have horns in their heads. But so it was almost a surreal experience. And actually we are theoretically we're one, but actually we are different. We're similar but different, and then that sort of gives you a sense of like a kind of very strange emotions but very strong emotions. I get more attached the more I visit like North Korea, like the more I get attached to them.
Seeing those attachments, seeing whether it's the family reunions or things like that. I mean, even as a non-Korean, I watch those, and it's the emotions are visceral, they're tangible. You can feel this kind of connection. This might be a little bit political, but let me ask you anyway, Su-jin. How do South Korean political developments affect your work as a journalist? For example, under 5 years of President Moon Jae-in, lots of engagement, lots of peace. There were big sort of banners hanging from City Hall advocating this. And we know the Conservatives take a more hardline approach. So we'll have probably 5 years of President Yoon Suk-yeol. How do the internal...
Did you say probably 5 years?
You never know with South Korean politics, do you? You never know. So
it's dynamic Korea.
Dynamic, sparkling politics. How do the domestic politics affect your work? What's that like?
Yes, that's a very great question, David, I have to say. And it's not just domestic politics that affect my work, it's international politics as well. Because like one of the if I have to choose like 5 moments in my like a career that really stand out, that I will remember forever, is one of them is actually the time that I covered the first ever summit talk between the United States and and North Korea, DPRK, and that was in Singapore, and that was like possible because like the United States had elected a president like Mr. Donald Trump. So like that was how the international politics like sort of like affected my work. And that was also possible because we had a president like Moon Jae-in. Yeah. So actually like the politics it is really a strong and very important factor in my everyday work, I have to say.
It's interesting you say that, Su-jin, because for many people in the United States, President Trump was persona non grata. He was just like, not my president. It's very divisive, hated figure. But then in South Korea, for those that wanted engagement, for those that wanted it, they weren't seeing it through the lens of American politics or culture wars. They were like, for example, you got to see all of these things and go to these summits. So it's kind of different, isn't it, through that South Korean lens?
Yes, actually, well, I am not very sure whether I am a big fan of Mr. Donald Trump. But actually, well, it was a really strange combination. But we had these leaders, like a Chairman Kim Jong-un in the north
Mm,
and President Moon Jae-in in the south. And across the Pacific, we had like a Mr. Donald Trump. So it was like this like strange trio, sort of like what turned out to be a kind of a, I don't know, maybe once in a lifetime sort of
mm,
a opportunity for like journalists like me. So yeah, it was it really, to say the least, interesting.
mm. It was, I agree with you, it was that perfect alignment, because if, you know,
Yeah.
the right or the left were on different sides, it wouldn't have worked, I don't think. Um,
Mm.
let's talk about North Korea a little bit, Sujin. So, in your book, while reading it, I really get the idea that you're talking about royal families, you're talking about
Yes.
kings and queens and princesses, and that was the norm for the Korean Peninsula. The history of the Korean Peninsula was there was a king, the king died, then there was another king. It didn't really concentrate too much on the everyday people, the ilbanins like us, but is North Korea a monarchy? Should we understand it as a royal family, or what is North Korea, Sujin?
Well, actually, I think North Korea is really kind of very unique
Mm,
in the sense of the modern society, even in this like a 21st century. I think I get the sense that it is a kind of a regime. Well, it is more of a dynasty.
mm,
I think it is just more of a like the Kim dynasty. So of course, I do have like respect for North Korean society. Of course, like, I am not sort of like saying, oh, they're wrong. I'm just saying that, it's like their style
mm,
and we have to acknowledge it. We have to understand it correctly. But it is a fact that, it is not democratic society and it is more of a kingdom. And
mm,
in that sense, like there's an heir always, the heir apparent. And and it is more of a still like patriarchic kind of society. So I think it is not ready for a queen, but it still like has only the kings. Yeah. And Chairman Kim happens to be the third dear leader. Yeah.
mm. The Korean Peninsula hasn't had many queens in its very long
No.
history. I would test my history,
Mm.
but it's Sondok Yo-wang and Jindok
Yeah.
Yo-wang and
Yeah.
Jinsong Yo-wang, I think,
Yeah.
in all of that. North Korea seems very Korean to me. I mean, you say it's not democratic, it's kind of Confucian, it's kind of patriarchal. It kind of seems like a continuation of that Joseon. What's your take on that? But that North Korea, it rather than seeming weird or strange, which to some people it might do, to me it feels like, just kind of very Korean, but without the modern Western democratic influences swept around
Mm.
it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take, and that sort of like brings me back to one of my trips to North Korea. And that was a time when I was with this government official who happens to be my friend, and he told me that he still hates me, but he told me he told me that, well, this feels like South Korea, like circa 1970s
Mm.
or even 1950s, but he was not born during that time, so he was just like referring to those old times. So I do really completely agree with you in that, like, North Korea seems to be South Korea. I mean, not South Korea. North Korea seems to be the old Korea
Mm.
as it was, as it used to be. But it needs a little like change or progress or like whatever you choose to say. Like, yeah, it needs some change. Yeah,
I guess one
especially for women's rights. Yeah.
we do need to talk about women, because that's the focus of your book.
Yeah.
Just before we get there, another big focus of your book, and I'm jumping through these because we are a bit pressed for
Mm-hmm.
time, but one of them is unification, Sujin. You've written this book in the hope of unification, and
Yeah.
is this going to happen in our lifetimes? In 5-10 years, are we going to be you and I having Pyongyang naengmyeon, something like this, or does your heart and your head tell you different things? Look into your crystal ball for us, Sujin, and give us unification, please.
I forgot to bring my crystal ball. It's at my home, but still. But actually, that's another good question. But well, we do have this like survey results, like saying, like telling us that like well, especially the younger generations, they do not want the two Koreas to become one. They just they just want the things to stay as it is right now because they think well, not all of them, hopefully, but like many of like those people, like younger generations, they think that it costs money to reunite with North Korea. And that is true. That is a fact. And but still, like, so that is one way to say it, like our head, like our sort of like our head, like tells us that it is not wise, like to unite again with North Korea to become just one Korea. But still, our hearts, like, still like tell us, especially my heart, like, I strongly think that we belong to each other, and I really hope to visit North Korea like with my family. Although my grandparents they all like passed away, like, but well, I still like vividly remembered how like they cried whenever they talked about like their like childhood memories or like how it was great like back in those days like playing in the like hills like of like a North Korean like village or something. So I think like we still belong to each other and well, but it would not be easy. It would not be it was never easy and it will not be easy, and I am not sure whether I will be able to like travel to North Korea, I mean to Korea in the northern part of the peninsula well like in my lifetime. But I still hope like that those days would come. That's just like what I have to say.
Yeah, me too, and I hope your dreams come true in that sense as well, and for the Korean people. A weird random question all of a sudden. Did you watch Sarange Bulshijak, Crash Landing on You?
Well, I have to say I watched the first episode.
Okay.
But I stopped watching it.
Wow, I'm surprised.
Because
I thought you would have watched this all. For any listeners that don't know, this is a story about the South Korean woman and the North Korean soldier who fall in love. And yes, please.
yeah, well, I really like I really love like the actor and actress, but I was like it was just too obvious. Like those like they will fall in love and they will against all odds they will be one. Like blah blah blah. And I happened to be like well sort of like into another like series back then, so I did not have time.
So you had your
Yeah, that was
stand, you had your
yeah,
bias, and that was
yeah.
K drama. Which one was it? Can I ask? I'm curious now.
No, it was my guilty pleasure, and I'm not gonna tell anybody.
I'm watching 이상한 변호사 우영우 at the moment and
Oh yeah,
thoroughly
that's
enjoying it.
really fun, right? Yeah,
That's
that's so yeah, it's so 재밌어.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's really good. And the Dongorami character, lovely.
yes, I love it. Yeah, I love her.
So we see women in these characters now,
Yeah.
in these dramas. Let's talk about the women in some of your books, Su-jin, because, on the front we have Kim Yo-jong, and she's described as the giggly princess.
Oh yes.
Your book is about women in North Korea, particularly in elite circles, I should say. It's not about the everyday experience, but rather those in close to political power. What can you tell us? Where do you want to start with this about these high-ranking North Korean elite women?
Well, yeah, David. Actually, I really wish I could write about like the everyday lives of like Jacks and Jills of North Korea, but I could not do that because I wanted to for this book I wanted to like share my own personal experiences, the stories that I actually heard myself, and the stories that I actually saw like like taking place in my own like, before my own eyes. So the reason I focused on these four like power ladies is because I could get to see them in action on several occasions. And it was really also very interesting to me because, well, I think it is a first in North Korean history that like so many ladies were in power in public. Because back in those days of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, like even their wives were like it was a taboo for them to be shown in public. So like there were no women in sight. But actually, like one really significant change in the era of Chairman Kim Jong-un is that like he is never afraid of like employing women. and have this like a lady entourage. So I wanted to like bring their stories and like share my experiences of like a being able to like cover their actions like in Singapore, in Hanoi, or in like Vladivostok. So that's the reason I wrote the book. Yeah.
Does it help being a South Korean woman to look at North Korean women? Does identity help? Are
Hmm.
you able to do a better job of writing this book about North Korean women because you're a South Korean woman than say I would be able to?
I guess yes and no, because well, as a South Korean woman, I have more attachment, I guess, like because and I'm not just a South Korean woman. I am also blessed with North Korean heritage, so I always think that I could have been one of them, but if I were born with a silver spoon in my mouth, only, well,
Yeah.
but still I always think sort of like used to tell myself that if I were born in North Korea, I could have been reporter for Rodong Human, for the state-run newspaper.
Mm.
So I always like sort of like think that like women, as a woman, I always like feel really strongly attached to them, because I could have been one of them. So that sort of like gives me a sense of kind of even the duty to write, like with earnesty, like with like really like like with passion.
Hmm.
So that sort of like gives me a sense of like duty to be the messenger for them, like for the global audience. So
I,
maybe I hope this answered your question.
it does perfectly, and I think that empathy is really important and
Yes,
understanding, because
empathy.
we've moved on from the horns descriptions, which were just part of a time. Things
Yeah,
change, and so you're part of
yeah.
this new attitude. Speaking, let's say, of Kim Jong Un's sister, Kim Yo Jong specifically. For some people, she's the source of great memes, and
Mm,
she's been turned into it like a sex symbol in some parts of the internet, quite weirdly. For other people, she's very mysterious, or she's hardliner. The language she uses towards President Moon,
yes.
ex-president, all over the place. The perceptions of her. Who is she? Can you give us any insight?
Well, I described her as a giggly princess in my book, but
Mm-hmm.
that was actually a quote from one of my really like dear sources, who I cannot name, and he has like met Kim Yo-jong several times, and he told me that like in person, Kim Yo-jong is really lighthearted, and she knows how to have fun with other people, and she smiles a lot. But actually, that would be Kim Yo-jong in her private life. But like during daytime, like when she is at work, I think she would be very smart, shrewd, and very determined person. And she knows like how to use her power. And she is really smart person, because like when you get to read like what was printed under her name, I do not quite think that she wrote those words herself, but I'm actually she approved that like it would be printed under her name, and it has its own logic, and it uses like very strong phrases. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, North Koreans like they have reputation for using strong like like words and expressions, but
Mm-hmm.
still even with that premise, like her writing is really something unique, and you can feel that she is really something. Yeah, she knows how to utilize her power.
I let's go to power. I want to come after that to this idea that sometimes, in terms of values or codes or aesthetics, like in North Korea, a non-smiling face might be the beautifully accepted face, if you know what I mean. We
Yes,
live in a
yes.
culture where we're meant to smile, but for North Korean, maybe the appropriate thing is the non-smile, and I think that confuses a lot of people actually. How close to power is Kim Yo Jong? Is she the heir apparent? Is she waiting there to kick over her chairman brother? Or is she a symbolic figure, part of the Pektu line? What's your sense of her proximity to power, Su-jin?
Yes, she is definitely the Baekdu blood, the Baekdu 혈통, Baekdu lineage,
Mm.
and I sort of like get the sense that after like watching like Kim Jong-un's reign for the past like 11 years, you get the sense that like Chairman Kim Jong-un depends really on Kim Yo-jong really a lot. Like well, Kim Yo-jong is absolutely the number one like a confidant like to Chairman Kim Jong-un. That's like out of doubt, out of question. But actually, well, I do not quite think that Kim Yo-jong is the heir apparent because like well, Kim Jong-un might have like well his sons like and like I think like there are princes, and the princess like has no place in the current like well state of North Korea. That like to me that is still something not imaginable. But still like and I think what's really interesting is that Kim Yo-jong is very aware of that, and she actually I think she actually accepts like the reality, and she is still like doing her part as the like a number one confidant. Like she's the blood that Kim Jong-un can trust. And Kim Jong-un and Kim Yo-jong, they have stories like and because like they were really close to each other from very like from they were like very little from their when they were babies, because they were born from mother that like Kim Jong-il like the father was really treasured. Kim Jong-il really treasured their mother, but still like Kim Il-sung did not acknowledge their mother. So they actually had this like childhood like that was not very happy because they were not allowed to like see their like father or grandfather, and because Chairman Kim Jong-un does not have a photograph like taken together with Kim Il-sung or Kim Jong-il. So that sort of like means that like Kim Jong-un and Kim Yo-jong, they were like pretty close, like because they had like each other, and well yeah they have that distant memory. So that is why like Kim Jong-un like can like oh he might feel that okay I have like my sister and she's the one and only person that is related to me by blood, and she's the one that I can turn to.
And I think you make a great point. And if you're growing up in a regime or a country or a state like that, especially if you're that close to power, you would have fewer and fewer friends, and so those blood relations become really important. I think we can say that Kim Yo-jong is not only surviving, she seems to be succeeding in the North Korean apparatus. She's right there at the top. There are great photos in your book, by the way, Su-jin, and you did make that really interesting point that because Chairman Kim Jong-un doesn't have any photos with his father or his grandfather, that sort of puts up questions about his legitimacy or his rule, and maybe that's why he's trying to ape his grandfather's appearance, because you can look at old photos of Kim Il-sung and it really looks like Chairman Kim Jong-un.
I know.
And so maybe that's part of that.
Yeah, actually that was one of the stories that I have written like 5 years ago, I guess. I mean, when Kim Jong-un like really rose to power, like really, and I think I do agree with you, David, because like Kim Jong-un sort of like well, I mean, he actually mimics everything that his like a grandfather did, like from the way he dresses, from the way he walks, and from the way he speaks. So maybe, and actually, there's no question that Kim Il-sung is still like respected like as the son in North Korea. I mean, still like the birthday of Kim Il-sung is the biggest holiday in North Korea, and they call it like a 태양절, which means that the day of the sun. And that is why I actually gave the like some title of the book as Daughters of the Sun. So like, and actually like, Kim Jong-un has this like questions about his own legitimacy. So that is why he actually wants to be seen like his grandfather, the son.
One of the facts that once you hear you never forget is that Kim Il-sung was born the day the Titanic sank. That's the day of the sun, 1912. Let's talk about another woman if we can, because this is the focus of your book, and let's talk about Ri Sol-ju, Chairman Kim Jong-un's wife, the first lady of Pyongyang. You've written a lot about her. You've also said that, you know, in many of her faces, she keeps a very stoic, a very, you know, Lady
Mm.
Gaga-esque poker face, and that might be some of the aesthetics. Who is Ri Sol-ju? Is she a first lady? Do we understand it differently? What's her position?
Actually, she is a really interesting first lady. I think that there's no question that she's really the first lady, and she's really treasured by Chairman Kim Jong-un, and she is the first ever first lady of North Korea. I have to say, in the sense that like the past like first ladies of North Korea,
Mm.
do we even recall their names? Like, do we even have the photos of them standing well hand in hand with their husbands?
Mm.
No. And Lee Seol-ju is the first of its kind, of her kind, like to be presented just the way she is right now with Kim Jong-un. And I think Kim Jong-un in that sense is really smart because it is not possible for Lee Seol-ju to be in public without Kim Jong-un's approval
Hmm.
in the setting of North Korea, that is. So I think like Kim Jong-un sort of like acts like the modern day, like an average like country's leader
Mm.
who treasures like his spouse and like who has this like normal like first lady,
Mm.
and I think that it's just like Chairman Kim's like well I don't know like well sort of like an image that he wants to build, and I think Isarju plays a really key role in that sort of like, setting agenda.
I completely agree with you there, because when we think of Kim Jong Il, we think of many wives. We've already covered some of that, like
Yes,
courtesans type thing.
yes.
But for that modern image, to be a modern world leader, you have a first lady or a first husband. And so
Hmm.
that's what he
Hmm.
seems to be doing. Um, you write about Lee Sol-ju telling Chairman Kim Jong-un, calling him nampion, which is
Oh, yes.
husband rather than leader, and giving him tansori for all the smoking and things like that. Does that continue to humanize them to help us bring closer or show different sides of these otherwise world leaders?
Yes, I really love the word that used, humanize.
Mm.
That's the key thing that Kim Jong-un wants to like, like show to the world that we are human and we do the things that you guys do.
Mm.
And actually, Lee Seol-ju is really making the key role in that part. And I think like that Nanpyeon statement like came I think during the inter-Korean summit talk with then President Moon Jae-in,
Mm.
and it was a first image ever that we saw like and the leaders of both Koreas with their first ladies
Mm.
together,
Mm-hmm.
and we had this like video image, and we saw like in that image Lee Seol-ju was like telling or the President Moon Jae-in that oh, my husband, my 제 남편 is like and I was like, oh my gosh, is this real?
Mm.
I mean like I mean, as you know, like a Chairman Kim Jong-un is the son of the sun, right?
Mm.
And he is like he is kind of a God, and God was humanized, being a nampion, being a husband to a human being. So that was kind of a moment that sort of like a it was really strong. Like, it was a strong memory to like everybody.
He was humanized as a man trying to control his bad habits by his wife, and I perhaps
Yeah, smoking.
I empathized with that very much. And I wonder, did she say 제 남편 or 우리 남편? Because it's still kind of weird to me when in Korea sometimes people say, "Oh, 우리 남편은," and it's like our husband is weird in English, right? But yeah,
It is really weird, and it's not 우리 남편. It's like 우리 wife or like 우리 이모 or like
yeah, you
we
don't
like a
have an
Korean.
our husband.
Yeah, I mean Koreans are the we people. So
They are dynamic career. Do you want to say anything about Isolju's fashion or style? Because your book does talk about her handbags, and I think more than Kim Yo-jong, she does have a bit of swag and a bit of flex. Do you have any comments on that? Because you do write about it.
yes, because I wrote in my book about like Lee Seol-ju's handbag, the luxury bag. And that was because like whenever I get to write about Lee Seol-ju, like I get a lot of like a page views whenever I write about her fashion. Not about her sort of like the meaning, the implications behind her like actions. Like I think the readers are more interested in like what brand she wears or like what brand she carries. Well, no judgment, but still, I mean, like Lee Seol-ju, there's no question that Lee Seol-ju is a really fashionable leader, and she is really I mean, she's a beautiful lady, and she knows like how to present herself. And I think like, and it's not just Lee Seol-ju, I have to say. May I like if I may, I would like to like speak about Choi Sun-hee at the same time in that like note of fashion, because Choi Sun-hee happens to be the first ever foreign minister, like a woman, a female foreign minister of North Korea, and actually among these South Korean journalists and also the diplomats and the government officials like who actually got to see her, like we always like get mesmerized by her fashion. She knows how to dress, and she is not as flamboyant as like a Lee Seol-ju, but she always is in black or like navy color, toned down colors, but still she knows fashion. And the skirts and the bags, then there's always something special about that, about her. So I think like, I mean, I actually wanted, my publishers were against this idea, but I wanted to have a separate chapter dedicated to the fashion. But actually, like to me, like their fashion is really an item of interest personally.
Maybe that'll be your next book. That sounds like a
Well, no.
I know how hard one is, and you're right that those things do get attention. I've read pages and pages about what brand of cigarettes Kim Jong-un smokes and things like that. So it is an attention thing. I wonder, have you seen any of this is a bit off topic from some of the questions we prepared, but have you seen any of the YouTube vlogs and things coming out of North Korea at the moment? Because they heavily feature women, sometimes very young girls, sometimes, women in their 20s or 30s going shopping, and you get insights into fashion and things there. A lot of foreign websites, YouTube and that, they take them down, actually, which if you want to understand North Korea is a bit frustrating. Do you have any comment on these kind of vlogs and this kind of attempt at soft power that North Korea is attempting?
Well, actually, I have to say that I have not like really like watched those like YouTube's vlogs like often, but I think like any approach to get to know North Korea is necessary. I think like of course we are only human, so we have like and we are not all of them are journalists, so like not all of those like vlogs or YouTubes may be facts. They may be distorted or even prejudiced, but still like any approach to understand North Korea as it is welcome to me. But like I mean, but there are some like YouTubes or like vlogs that actually like sort of like a makes a voyeurism-ish kind of approach, and that is not good. That does not help.
There's a young girl in Pyongyang at the moment speaking, and she sounds more British than me. She talks about Harry Potter and things. It's fascinating, but I agree with you that we need to humanize it, and perhaps in the future we'll do another conversation and we'll get into more of Choi Sun-hee and Song-wol, and there's lots more. Just before you go, if I could ask you one last question, Su-jin, which is this, because last night one of my students, Jin-sol, asked me about advice getting into journalism and things like that, and how should she do it. So my question is, from your experience and wisdom, Su-jin, do you have any advice for young people today? It can be about journalism or just life in general. What advice can you give them to help perhaps have a life that they can be proud of, to be able to smile like you're smiling now in this conversation? What would you say to those people, Su-jin?
Well, I don't know. If I were them, well, life would be very hard, of course. I mean, but I would like tell them not to lose hope. And I think that happiness is not something given to you, but happiness is something that you acquire, like by your own definition. You have your own sort of sense of happiness, and it is something that you have created, and you never let it go, and just do not give up. I don't know. Maybe I should like say this to my very self.
Right, let me ask you one last one then. What makes you happy, Su-jin? What makes you
Well,
happy?
the conversations that I am having with you, the conversations with my friends, and okay, what makes me happy is that like I share the same emotions with other people.
Yeah.
The compassion. Yeah, that sort of like makes me happy. Yeah.
Then it makes you feel part of something bigger, I think, rather than just
Yeah.
alone and completely.
That is the meaning of our life, like I mean life is ephemeral, like we all die, but still like we want to leave a mark of some sort like on this planet, right? And to make it a better place.
Completely agree. This was short, but thank you for leaving a mark, Su-jin, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you to say that. Yeah, thank you.